we get paralyzed by fear, rightfully so. And fear keeps us complacent. And that complacency is an extremely dangerous place to be when there is so much good right on the other side of that decision.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today. Today, we have another financial advisor that I really enjoyed working with through his due diligence process that almost 2 years ago launched his independent practice, Applewhite Tyll Retirement Partners, with LPL Financial. And I just love these podcasts because there's so many misconceptions out there in the industry, especially amongst bank financial advisors, in terms of how much of their assets they're going to be able to bring. Are they going to be able to generate referrals? And are they going to be able to grow after they make a leap to a firm that is away from the referral source of the bank? So super excited to have Sean Tyll on the line with us today to talk about his experience. Sean, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited.
I love your office, so that's amazing.
Yeah, well, we can thank LPL for that.
Awesome. So if you don't mind, before we get started, if you can just tell us, a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got in the business, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so I started in the business at a young age. I had been laid off from one of my employers and was sort of like in between jobs. And my dad took me to see his financial advisor at Edward Jones. And I showed up looking like a rag doll, and the financial advisor saw something in me. I don't know what, but saw something in me and started the recruiting process. So I started off at Edward Jones, sort of built what I call like the base of my practice there. Um, then I transitioned to Wells Fargo Advisors in the bank channel, WBS. And I was there for just shy of 8 years before starting our independent practice with my business partner, Tracy Applewhite. So it's kind of like all is well that ends well. And we're so excited to be independent and kind of be where we are. We feel like we're at the right place at the right time.
That's awesome. So just out of curiosity, what made you leave Edward Jones and what made you choose, Wells Fargo as your next firm?
Yeah. So I was doing really great at Edward Jones, and Jones was a really good place for me to start. But I knew sort of from the beginning that I wanted more than what Jones was going to allow me to do. And I also knew from the beginning that there had to have been like a path of least resistance, right? And so at the time, I got approached by Wells Fargo advisors, and I interviewed PCG and WBS, ultimately landed at WBS. But what drew me to WBS was the fact that you had the opportunity to partner with the bank and potentially get referrals. And any FA that is in the WBS channel knows that you don't just sit in your office all day and get referrals. There's a lot of work that goes into that. But I ended up being extremely successful in it, number one in my region a lot of times for referred investment assets. And so while I was there, it was good until it wasn't. And it really helped me build my business maybe more quickly than I would have done at the time staying at Edward Jones, knocking on doors. But since then, the business there has changed drastically. So again, that was sort of right place, right time for both me and my clients.
I talk with financial advisors all the time that are maybe they started off at, an Edward Jones type of broker dealer or an insurance-based broker dealer, and they're looking to take, that next leap. I mean, what do the actual referrals, look like inside of a Wells Fargo advisor chassis? Like, what percentage of your business is coming directly from the bank versus you developing your own referrals? Is that regional? Is it different regionally? What does that look like?
Yeah. So Corey, you've known me for a long time, and you know I'm extremely forthcoming with the truth and what's on my mind. When I joined Wells Fargo Advisors, it was a different place than it was when I left Wells Fargo Advisors. Pre-settlement, I would say that we were sort of firing on all cylinders. Ultimately, people care about what they're compensated for. And when Wells Fargo removed compensation for your bank partners for referring to FAs, and when sort of like, the goals went away, the business basically stopped. So I was doing the exact same activities. I was probably working even more than I was, and I was getting a fraction of the referrals. And the referrals that was getting, it was it was a difficult conversation. It was just it was not the type of referral I wanted to build my business off of towards the end, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And they were few and far between. So I sort of felt like, hey, I'm taking a haircut on payout to be part of this WBS model that is supposed to be a higher volume, lower payout sort of model, but the volume's not there. And every year my payout goes down. And so that definitely was a contributing factor to me taking a step back and saying, is this economical, and who's actually winning here? If it's not the client and it's not me, who's the common denominator? And so that's when, I would say my search sort of became more real. That, and then COVID, when they sent everybody to work from home, and I realized, hey, I'm growing faster without being in a bank branch, working from home. I can do this. I don't need the bank branch anymore. My clients refer to me. I know how to make it rain, etc. That's sort of when my eyes and Tracy's eyes were open, and we were like, hey, we're not as dependent on Wells Fargo as they want us to think that we are.
Sure. Yeah. And that makes sense. I mean, you're getting a significant pay decrease because, you're supposed to get these referrals from the bank, and you could have gotten a higher payout at PCG or Private Client Group on the wirehouse side. So, I mean, basically you're getting, WBS payout, but, acting as a PCG advisor, finding all your own opportunities.
Correct. Yeah.
So I know there's some other things throughout our due diligence process that were kind of a, recruiting push for you. In my industry, there's pushing the financial advisor, basically out the door, things that are going on that make them want to leave their firm. And then there's also pulls, things that they wanted to do that they can't do at their firm, that they find out that they can do at other places that really attracts them, outside. So my first question to you is, on top of, COVID and, the lack of referrals after, some policy changes inside of Wells Fargo, what were some of the other things that were pushes for you that made you want to leave?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a really big question. The first thing that I would say is every advisor knows how much it takes of you to build a solidified relationship with a client. The kind of relationship you would want to have, where it's completely built on trust. The client takes your advice, the client refers you business, they become a raving fan, all of that stuff, right? You literally pour your heart and your soul into these relationships. And if you're like me, these clients basically become family, and you genuinely care about them and your well-being. One of the biggest things that continuously pushed me out the door at Wells Fargo Advisors was the fact that I spent a significant portion of my day defending the very firm that I work for. And that did not sit well with me, that I was putting so much of myself into a relationship with a client that I genuinely care about. And something completely out of my control was ultimately affecting that relationship. And I constantly felt like I would take 3 steps forward with my clients and then have to take 2 steps backwards. And so I really wanted to be at a place where I was not going to consistently be embarrassed for something that I didn't do. So that was a big one. The other thing is I really wanted to be entrepreneurial, and I really wanted to run my practice the way that I thought was truly best for my clients. And sticking everybody into a firm managed model because that's the path of least resistance and that's what the firm thinks that you should do from a risk perspective also was not sitting well with me. And then, just from like a compliance perspective, everything was just really hard. It was a 5-step process, Corey, to send my client a thank you card after an appointment. Like that should not take 30 minutes. That is a 30-second task, right? And so just looking at our practice from the outcomes we want our clients to have, from the way we wanted to run our business, the way we wanted to market our business, the experience that we wanted our clients to have, and the relationships that we wanted to have with both current prospective clients and centers of influence, there were just a lot of things that said, this might not be the right place for us, and it might not be the right place for our clients. And so that's when we really started, talking to you and learning more about other options.
And one other thing that we talked about, Sean, in terms of, headline risk or, headline issues with your broker dealer, the conversations you have with your clients or had with your clients, those are just the people, that came to you. When I'm working with other financial advisors, the scary thing is one of your clients that is giving your name and saying you're doing a great job. And, they said that you were at, XYZ firm and didn't pick up the phone and call you, because of that headline risk. So there's a lot of unknown from a growth path of your business as well, which is scary.
For sure. Absolutely. And I've seen that. So I've only been at my new firm, LPL, for just shy of 2 years, right? But in that 2 years, it's like, if I could explain it, it's like this pent up desire for my clients to want to refer me has been unleashed since leaving my old firm. And I don't know if that's because they were always referring me and people weren't calling me, to your point, or if that's because they liked me, they did business with me, but they always had some sort of hesitation about my firm. And now that hesitation's gone and they have no reason to not refer me. I'm not sure which one it is. But what I can say is one of my biggest fears with leaving the bank channel was, how am I going to grow? It's been ingrained in my head that I need these bank referrals to grow. And what am I going to do when I don't have them, right? Now that the wool is off my eyes, I guess I could look back and say, did I ever really have them? Because they were so few and far between anyway, right? But you always had the hope that it's coming. But yeah, we've had no issues growing. In fact, I would tell anybody that is in a bank channel, because I know how they feel, that if that's one of your number one fears, nix that right now, because you're going to grow. You're going to spend more time with your clients. You're going to have better relationships with your clients. And it's just going to happen if you do the right activities.
That's awesome. I just helped another Wells Fargo advisor transition a couple months ago on the West Coast. And he said exactly what you said. He said, Corey, I used to think that, this referral source was kind of, my sale, but, I'm starting to realize, it was very much an anchor to, getting me to where I need to be. And, this financial advisor, his business niche was consulting business owners on the potential exit out of their business. And he kind of realized, he said the exact same thing that you did about the referrals. if you are, consulting business owners and you don't yourself, own your own business, he got a few questions about that, which kind of made the light bulb go off and kind of realize where he needed to be. But he said that his referrals have increased fourfold since he's made the transition. And when a bank advisor asks me that sometimes, I think they think I'm a little crazy when I tell them that, clients root for a business owner that, but it's good to hear it from someone else than me. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend a whole podcast talking about this subject alone, right? Because I'm just so familiar with how that feels and how that looks and the hope that comes with it. But the other thing I would say is, I really needed to stop and think about how much time was I dedicating to pouring into the bank relationship, and how much time did that take away from my clients and business development and all of that? And was it being reciprocated? And the answer is no. I was in a customer connection meeting, 3 times a week. I was on conference calls and doing trainings and banker happy hours and all these things that help drive referrals. And while I was one of the most successful people at it, it still wasn't enough to justify the amount of time that I was putting into that I could have spent on something else.
It's awesome. I pulled up one of my old texts from you from like right after your first year, and you said I had my best year ever last year. My revenue was up 20% in my first full year after a transition in a down market. So
Yeah,
hats off to you.
yeah, I'm really proud of that. And I'm so humbled and thankful for that. And my clients are amazing. And it's just right place, right time, right activities, consistency, all of that.
So when you made the actual transition, Sean, so one big thing I get from a lot of wirehouse advisors or advisors that are, part of a big institution, they're worried about leaving that big known name that has a bank, that has everything all under one roof. How did your clients react to you making a move to a firm that doesn't spend a ton of money on advertising?
Yeah. LPL is the biggest firm in the country that you've never heard of, right? And that's strategic. And it was a very simple objection to overcome. And I actually, looking back at it during like the heat of my transition, when I called my clients and told them that had left and all of that, I think overwhelmingly the response was a sense of relief, which was wild to me. I mean, you always have those clients that surprise you, that are hesitant, that find some level of security in some large institution. But overwhelmingly, what I learned is that my clients do business with me. And in hindsight, I wish I would have spent some time thinking about, in my own world, who do I do business with? My dentist, my CPA, my attorney, all of this stuff, right? Like, there's always mega options. But then if I look at my life, I do business with the people that I know and the people that I trust. And it really ultimately doesn't make a difference who they are affiliated with, because that person is the constant in our relationship. And so I know it's extremely hard to fathom breaking free of the toxic corporate culture that you need us. But the fact of the matter is, they need you, and your clients do business with you. And I wish I could just like put a billboard up on the side of the interstate and tell every financial advisor in the world that, because I was literally crippled, if you remember, by fear when I left Wells Fargo Advisors, because it just impounded in my head that bank clients don't move and you're not going to take any of your clients with you. And it simply just absolutely was not the case at all.
That's awesome, Sean. It's I'm so glad you said that. I think a lot of financial advisors just discount how much of an impact they make on their clients day to day. And if they position the move in terms of articulating what's in it for the client, that's the reason why the client hired that advisor in the first place. And they're going
Yeah.
to move. So, I mean, I guess I'm just sure, I'm just curious, like, what specifically did you say to your clients when you
Yeah.
transition?
I called my clients and I said, hey, and you know, what's funny, every advisor is going to relate to this because we all sit in appointments with clients in a bank branch and they all ask us, especially like in your first or second appointment when they're first starting to do business with you, they all say, what happens if you leave? Right. And when I worked at Wells Fargo, I always said, look, I have no intention of going anywhere. But Wells Fargo Advisors participates in the broker protocol. And if I were to ever make a transition, it would have to be in my client's best interest. And I'll make sure that I reach out to you and let you know what your options are. And so when I called my clients, I just said, hey, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, I promised you that if something ever changed, I would give you a call because it's true. I did promise them that. I've recently moved my business to LPL Financial, and I kind of gave a little, 10-second spiel about who LPL is. And then I just sort of opened it up for questions and saw where the conversation went and let the client lead that conversation and told them what their options were. I was overwhelmed by the amount of people that on the first call said, Sean, you're not there anymore. Send me the paperwork right now. I don't want anybody else touching anything that we've done and X, Y, and Z. So, that was 80% of the calls. And then you had the 20% of the calls where you go through your spiel and the client says, well, I don't know who LPL is. Can you send me some information on LPL? The people that want to do more due diligence, which is perfectly fine and absolutely commendable, right? Like if you have to do that to have the confidence to make this decision, that's great. And then those people would call me back a week later, a few days later, and they'd say, yeah, Wells reassigned me to a new advisor and they called and they just weren't you and I'm used to you. So let's just get this done. Right. And so again, it reaffirmed that although the clients were cautious and they wanted to think about it and they wanted to make sure they were making an educated decision, ultimately what made the decision was the relationship that we had.
Awesome. Was there anything in like specifics you articulated going back to that what's in it for me as the client statement I made before that you talked about, or did you not even really need to go into that?
No, I mean, like I said at the beginning, like I spent a lot of time defending my old firm. And so it's sort of the story almost sort of told itself a little bit. And my clients felt a sense of relief when I told them that I was not affiliating with a large bank anymore. I think that there's some inherent perceptions and risk that bank advisors sort of turn their head to with being affiliated with a bank. And, one of the things people talk about all the time is diversification and everything that goes into that. I almost feel like my clients felt like it was a diversifier by not having their mortgage, their investments, their line of credit, and everything else in between under one roof that they really didn't even like anyway. It was just too much effort to change it.
Yeah, I mean that's a great way to put it. And we've had multiple instances in the last couple months of banks going under and financial advisors having to pick up and find a new home because of things
Yeah.
completely out of their control with a perceived safe bank. So there's
Yeah.
definitely that story as well. If you had the chance to do this all over again and transition again, would there be anything with the transition that you would have done differently, said differently, anything?
When the biggest thing I would have absolutely have done differently is I literally would not have had analysis paralysis. And while I completely understand that this is one of the biggest decisions of a financial advisor's life. I mean, this is your blood, sweat, and tears. For a lot of us, this is like your firstborn kid, right? And and so I understand the weight that this decision carries better than a lot of people I know. I mean, I have two young children. I have a house, I understand how serious this decision is. But I would say I would not have analysis paralysis. I would not get caught up in the absolute smallest, teeniest detail, because there is no absolutely perfect firm. But I feel like when we landed at LPL, it's 99% perfect. And only thing I wish I would have done is done it sooner. Like, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's not a cliche thing. It's very genuine when I say I just wish that I would not have waited so long. And these big firms are really good at keeping you on the hook just a little bit longer, just a little bit longer. Deferred comp, this is coming, comp plan changes, etc. But at some point, you've got to just recognize what's on the other side and how much freedom there is, how much more peace you're going to have, how much more time you're going to spend with your clients. Just do it.
We talked in the beginning, Sean. There's a lot of misconceptions out there around, making that leap. But, one definitive stat, I think we've talked about it before. There's thousands and thousands of financial advisors that have made the move from a wirehouse to independence. In my 10 plus year recruiting career, I could maybe think of one person that's ever gone back. So there's something there, there's something there. And I think it's, important to dig into and figure out what that is. And you did. So,
yeah. I mean, Corey, like my shirt right now says Applewhite Tyll Retirement Planners on it, right? It doesn't say Wells Fargo. And the pride that comes with that. And oh, by the way, I didn't have to get this approved by anybody. I just ordered it and I wear it and that's it, and I can give one to a client. Nobody cares because it's a shirt, right? Like, and so, I just think that we get paralyzed by fear, rightfully so, and fear keeps us complacent. And that complacency is an extremely dangerous place to be when there is so much good right on the other side of that decision.
After the transition, now that you're settled, you're about to have your 2-year anniversary. What has blown your mind about the independent channel, whether benefits for you or benefits for your clients, or like the way that you work with them? What have been the really big surprises?
Okay, so let's start with the financial advisor perspective.
Yeah.
My firm LPL, and this is so weird. When I was being recruited, they gave me the pitch like, we take care of our advisors so they can take care of their clients. We care about your business, all of that, right? But when you are an independent advisor, you are that firm's client. So they have a vested interest in supporting you and keeping you happy. You're not handcuffed to them in any way, shape, or form. And so, when I call LPL's home office for something and they end every single call with "thank you for your business," that still absolutely blows my mind. I'm like, you're welcome. Thank you for being there. Like it's just such a culture shift. Last week, Tracy, my business partner, and I, we were invited to a conference for LPL out in Las Vegas. And this is the second LPL conference I've been to where the CEO, Dan Arnold, is walking around at happy hour and just having a great conversation with everybody and genuinely invested in what's on your mind. I remember at my old firm, like I would send an email to my boss or my boss's boss, and I would get smacked because I went above their head, right? Like I've sent emails to Dan Arnold here and gotten a response in 24 hours. And my manager, if you want to call it that, like they're like, hey, that's really great. I'm glad that you reached out for help. What else can I do to support you? So just from like a culture perspective, it is completely different. I felt very oppressed and very controlled and very just sort of like dismal at my old firm. And here I feel extremely empowered. I'm going to do what's right for my clients. I'm going to do what I want to do to market my practice. I don't have to spend 30 minutes sending a thank you card. If I want to do a seminar, I do it. Like it's just so much more freedom and so much more of a supportive culture. So that's the biggest thing for an FA perspective for me. From a client perspective, I just think independence brings better client outcomes because the financial advisor is not shackled to what that firm is telling them they ought to be using, right? I remember so many times putting on like an annuity at another firm and knowing in my heart that that was the absolute best thing for that client, and compliance just absolutely just destroying it and making it mission impossible to do this annuity for the client. If it wasn't a firm managed mutual fund portfolio, you got 10 hours worth of homework to do what was right for your client. And that just does not exist in the independent space. They don't care if you use an SMA, if you use your own, you run your own portfolios, or if you use firm managed models. Ultimately, what they care about is that you're taking care of your clients and you're doing the right things for them. And I think that, again, that culture is something that I would want to be aligned with. So that was a lot of words, but those are all
that's
things.
perfect.
Yeah.
Have you felt like have you felt like you haven't had the same arsenal from like a banking standpoint for your clients' needs or anything like that?
Absolutely not. So, I mean, I do a decent amount of securities-based lending when it's probably more when rates weren't so high. That was an easy transition. And even with clients that had securities-based lending at my old firm, transitioning them here, that was not difficult at all. No, I mean, actually, I feel better about that now. When a client calls me, and this happens a lot, and they say, hey, Sean, I really am upset with X, Y, and Z bank. You can probably guess which one it is most often when they're calling me. Where do you think I should go and talk to? Well, now I have relationships at 3 or 4 different banks around town, and I can give my clients options. I can refer them to people that I have relationships with that I know are going to take really good care of them. We also have our own internal solutions for just about everything if you feel inclined to make that part of your practice. But if it's a simple checking account or something like that, we have people on the roster that we can send our clients to, and I know they're going to have a great experience. And the clients come back to us and they're so thankful for the choice and the referral.
Awesome. I guess my last question is what advice would you give to someone that's, just starting to consider looking around?
Yeah. The first thing I would say is I would work with an independent third party such as yourself. And Corey's not paying me to say that. I'm just saying that from the kindness of my heart. It costs you nothing. You do get sort of a independent third party opinion and kind of guidance. And it's kind of nice to have somebody in between you and the firms that you're talking to, just to make sure you understand things correctly or make sure you heard things the right way. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is don't get bogged down with talking to 15 different firms, because the more you look, the more firms there are. So I would find maybe like your top two, ideally three if you have to, and I wouldn't go too much further than that. If you start talking to 10 or 15 firms, you're going to get way overwhelmed, and you're going to be on the phone all day with recruiters, and you're going to get nothing done. So, so I would pick maybe your top choices and start there. And if they don't have what you need, then maybe backfill the roster.
Awesome. Sean, I really appreciate it. I'm so happy to see you over on the other side, growing and kicking butt, and can't wait to see what's to come.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.